Hello dreamers, and welcome to Dreaming Isle. I'm here to guide you into a calm and magical place tonight. Before we begin, take a moment to like this video and subscribe if you haven't already. It helps bring more dreamers to our little corner of the stars. And if you'd like, share in the comments, what's the world outside your window like right now? Quiet night? Rainy? City lights? Now, find your cozy spot. Let go of the day and let the story begin. Part 1. The Lantern and the Fog. There was no sky above, only stars drifting like seeds. Beneath them moved a forest, silent and glowing, its trees rising into the mist like tall glass candles. Each trunk pulsed with a faint inner light, and their leaves shimmered softly, as if exhaling dreams into the air. In the center of this floating forest walked a girl named Elira. She moved without hurry, feet quiet on the mossy trail. In her hands, she carried a small lantern, round, silver, and glowing from within, like it held a star caught in glass. It gave off no heat, only a gentle radiance that reached a few feet ahead of her, lighting the way through the ever-swirling fog. Elira didn't know how long she'd been walking. Time was strange in the forest. It didn't pass. It drifted, like clouds through trees. There were no clocks, no sunrises or nights, only the light of her lantern and the whispers in the trees. They weren't frightening whispers, just forgotten ones, memories, hopes, things someone once loved and then lost in the rush of growing older. They floated in the air like petals, sometimes brushing her cheek with a gentle sigh. "Elira," the forest whispered, in voices that weren't hers. She paused. At the base of a glowing cedar, she saw something flicker. A memory. A small swing tied with ribbon, a child's laugh, then silence. She tightened her grip on the lantern and continued forward, not out of fear, but with a feeling she couldn't explain, as if something ahead was waiting for her, something important. And the lantern pulsed a little brighter. Part 2. The Gate of Unspoken Dreams. The forest shifted around her, not in shape, but in feeling. The path beneath Elira's feet became softer, the moss thicker. The trees grew taller here, their branches reaching overhead like arches in a cathedral made of stars and silence. And then she saw it, an archway made from twisted wood and woven ivy, standing right in the middle of the path. It was taller than any doorway she had seen, far too large for any ordinary person to pass through, but still it felt welcoming. A sign hung above the arch, carved into pale wood. "Only those who still carry wonder may pass." Elira stepped forward. Her lantern flickered. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a long, soft creak, the arch opened. The ivy unwound like a ribbon. The wood unfolded like petals in bloom, and the space beyond was revealed. The forest on the other side was quieter, deeper. The trees were carved with spirals and stars. Some grew sideways, others floated, suspended just inches above the ground. The leaves shimmered, not green, but shades of gold and pearl. Here, everything whispered softly, but not in words. Ideas lived here. On one side of the path, a tree had books growing from its branches, pages fluttering in the windless air. On another, a giant lily bloomed with laughter that sounded like children skipping school. She passed a fountain filled with floating feathers, a hill that hummed in harmonies as she stepped. And the deeper she walked, the more she felt her own thoughts slowing, not in a bad way, but in a careful, listening kind of way, like the forest was asking her not just to move, but to notice. Then she came to a small pool, so still it looked like glass. She knelt beside it. In the water, she saw her reflection, but younger, maybe 7, maybe 8, drawing on a windowsill in the rain, lost in some story she never finished. She touched the water, and the lantern in her hands glowed softly, responding. The memory stayed, not gone, not claimed, just remembered. She rose and walked on. Part 3. The Violet Flame. The path narrowed now. Tall grasses whispered against Elira's legs as she walked, and the fog thickened, not in fear, but in softness, like walking through breath or memory. Ahead, something flickered, not a trick of her lantern, not her own reflection, but something new. A violet light hovered just above the path, small, quiet, pulsing, as if it breathed. Elira stopped, watching it. It did not run, it did not dim. It simply waited. She stepped closer and held out her lantern. The violet flame drifted downward, not with urgency, but with purpose. It touched the lantern's surface and passed inside. No sound, no flash, just warmth. Inside the lantern, the silver glow deepened, now twined with soft strands of violet. The color curled like smoke, like the edges of a memory returning from somewhere far away. And then, a voice, not from around her, but within the light. I once dreamed of dancing in the rain before I forgot what dancing was. Elira listened. It wasn't her voice, it wasn't her dream, but it felt familiar. She had never danced in the rain, but she had wanted to. Maybe that was enough. The violet flame wasn't a memory, it was a dream. One someone had let go of, so long ago it had wandered here to rest. Now it lived again, inside her lantern, waiting to be carried. Not owned, not claimed, just remembered. She continued walking. The path glowed slightly brighter ahead, and though the fog never quite cleared, she no longer minded. She was starting to understand that the mist was part of the dreaming, not something to fear, just something to walk through. Part 4. The Grove of Echoing Names. The path led Elira to a wide opening in the forest, a grove surrounded by tall, whispering trees whose trunks shimmered like old mirrors. Their bark was etched with names, hundreds of them. Some names were long and strange, others were short, familiar. Some she almost recognized, like half-remembered characters from stories she'd once heard, but couldn't place. The wind moved gently through the grove, and with it came voices. Elira, Jonas, Maris. I was going to build a ship from stars. I had a map once. I drew the whole world before I was 10. The trees were not speaking of people. They were remembering with them. At the grove's center stood a low circular fountain. It didn't flow with water, but with light. Pale gold mist drifted up from its surface, like threads spun in the air. It spiraled lazily with no hurry, like the kind of thought that arrives just before sleep. Elira approached and looked into it. Within the mist were visions, unfinished things, half-written songs, blank pages with titles, a pair of shoes worn once for a dance that never happened, a door sketched in chalk, never opened. These were not dead dreams, they were paused ones, things left behind with the intention of returning later. But later had never come. Elira knelt beside the fountain, her lantern warm against her chest. The violet within it pulsed softly, matching the beat of the mist. She sat there for a while. She didn't try to take the dreams, didn't try to claim them. She simply remembered what it was like to mean to finish something, to love something, even if only for a moment. As she sat in silence, one of the golden threads drifted upward, slow, like a rising thought. It twirled once and disappeared into the sky, and then another did the same, and another. The grove began to glow just a little brighter, and the trees, ever so faintly, began whispering new names. Elira stood. Her lantern now shone with silver, violet, and a soft strand of gold. Part 5. The Bridge Beneath the Sky. Beyond the grove, the forest began to thin. The trees grew farther apart, their roots vanishing into clouds. The ground faded into mist. And then there was no forest at all, only sky. Elira stood at the edge of it, of everything, and looked ahead. There, stretching from her feet into the open air, was a bridge made of glass. It floated, unsupported, above a sea of stars. Below the bridge, the constellations drifted slowly, as if they were floating in water. The stars glimmered faintly, like they were dreaming. The bridge arched gently upward toward a distant structure, a tower made of pale stone and light, with no doors and no windows, just a glowing crown at its peak. The lantern in Elira's hands pulsed. She stepped forward. The glass beneath her feet made no sound. It shimmered slightly with each step, catching reflections of her face, and sometimes faces that weren't hers. With every step, she felt herself becoming lighter, not physically, but emotionally, like she was shedding things she didn't know she'd been carrying. Doubts, expectations, deadlines. They dropped from her shoulders like dust and vanished into the sky below. Halfway across the bridge, she stopped. The stars beneath her formed into shapes, not constellations, but scenes. A girl sketching creatures that didn't exist. A map of a world made of clouds. A book filled with stories told to no one. They were her dreams, some old, some forgotten, some she'd been too shy to say aloud. Her lantern flickered, not in warning, but in recognition. These were not things she had lost. They had simply been waiting for her to come back. She placed a hand on the glass beneath her feet, closed her eyes. "I remember," she whispered. The stars didn't answer. They just continued to shine, and the bridge carried her forward. Part 6. The Keeper of Lanterns. The bridge ended at the base of the tower. There was no door, no gate, no guards, just an opening, a simple arch of stone glowing with quiet light. Elira stepped through. Inside, there was no floor. Not really, just space. A gentle void filled with drifting light. And hundreds, maybe thousands of lanterns floating like stars in slow, deliberate orbits. Each one was different. Some were small and faint, flickering softly like they had just been found. Others burned bright with multiple colors, blue, gold, rose, emerald, like they had been remembered again and again. They moved without touching, slow and peaceful, as if the air itself carried them. And there, in the center of it all, stood a figure, tall, cloaked in silver and gray. Their face was not hidden, but not quite seen. It shimmered like starlight reflected on water, always shifting, always kind. The Keeper. They turned to face Elira as she entered. "You've come far," they said. Their voice was calm, neither male nor female, just present, like a thought you always knew but never said out loud. Elira held up the lantern. The silver glowed softly. The violet shimmered. The golden thread curled inside like a memory made whole. "I didn't make the light," Elira said. "I only carried it." The Keeper nodded. "And that," they replied, "is the oldest kind of magic." They stepped forward and reached out, placing a gentle hand atop the lantern. It responded, pulsing once with warmth, then slowly lifting from Elira's hands. It floated upward, joining the others, finding its own slow orbit in the lantern sky. A guide, now, for someone else. Another Dreamwalker, perhaps. Someday. Elira looked up at it for a long time. And then the Keeper spoke again. "Would you like to stay?" they asked. "Many do. There is no shame in choosing peace." Elira thought for a moment, then shook her head, smiling softly. "Not yet," she said. "There's more to remember." The Keeper bowed slightly. "Then the path will return to you." They lifted one hand, and the space behind Elira unfolded into a trail of light, leading outward from the tower and down into the starlit mist. She turned, heart light, and began the walk back. Part 7. The Return. Elira stepped onto the trail of light. It felt like walking on memory, soft, familiar, glowing beneath her feet. There were no sounds, only the quiet pulse of stars and the warmth in her chest, where the lantern's glow had once been. But it wasn't gone. It had simply moved, inside her. As she walked, she passed places she'd been before, not exactly as they were, but changed, brighter. The forest shimmered gently at the edges of the sky. The trees whispered with greater clarity. The grove of echoing names now murmured new ones, names of people, perhaps just beginning to remember what they once loved. She crossed the glass bridge once more, not looking down at her dreams this time, but forward, toward the mist. And there, waiting on the other side, was a small boat. Not the same sky boat she had imagined, not ornate or magical, just a wooden vessel, big enough for one, with a folded sail and oars that dipped themselves gently into the clouds. She stepped in without hesitation. The boat moved forward. It did not rush. It drifted, like breath, like dreaming. The stars thinned above her, replaced by gentle indigo haze. The forest faded. The air grew cooler, softer. The world around her stilled, not in silence, but in peace. And far behind her, in the sky, where the tower still glowed faintly, a new lantern shimmered into view. Hers, steady, kind, waiting for the next one to find it. Elira closed her eyes. She didn't need to know where the boat was taking her. She only knew that she had remembered something worth keeping, and in doing so, had helped the world remember it too. So, if ever you find yourself drifting, unsure of where you're going, or what you've left behind, close your eyes, listen for the quiet, look for the mist, and remember, your light was never lost, only waiting. Sleep well, Dreamwalker. The lantern remembers you.